met Elijah on a day no one in the town of Boston Hollow would ever forget. The 2015 storm lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Highway 9 was underwater and the entire cell network went down. I was driving from Chicago to New York when I was forced to pull over at a roadside diner to wait it out. The sky had turned pitch black, and rain slammed against the windows like someone pounding to get in, and then I saw him trying to wring out his soaked jacket in the corner of the diner, his face streaked with mud, but his eyes steady and calm, like nothing could rattle him. "Stranded too?" he asked, his voice deep and slightly hoarse. I gave a small smile. If I'd known this town had something called surprise flash floods, I'd have stopped at the last exit. We shared a table for 6 straight hours, played cards with 2 long-haul truckers and an old lady who told ghost stories, laughing while splitting the last few snack bags left at the diner. When the service came back on, I almost forgot I was late for a meeting. I just felt light. I left with Elijah's Instagram handle and a strange flutter in my chest. A month later, we officially started dating. 2 years later, I became the wife of the man who made me laugh during a terrifying storm. Elijah was never the cliched sweet type. He didn't bring flowers on holidays, but he knew I preferred unsweetened iced tea over coffee. He never made a big show of affection, but he quietly found the exact brand of pen I'd been looking for 3 months. He always said, "Love isn't about dazzling someone, it's about giving them peace of mind." At 31, I gave birth to our first daughter, Nora. She was a perfect blend of both of us, yet came with an energy that defied all expectation. Nora moved like every step was a celebration, and her words always came out as little songs. And of course, she never sat still. At the time, I was a sales coordinator for an organic food company in Vermont. After giving birth, Elijah and I agreed that I would go part-time to care for Nora during her early years. He said, "I'll take care of the rest. Your job is to be a great mom." We didn't live in a mansion or drive a new car, but we had a cozy 2-bedroom home, a tiny vegetable garden out back, and lazy afternoons spent watching cartoons together. Elijah used to joke, "We're rich, just not in money." I used to believe that. I still keep the birthday cards Elijah hand-wrote for me in the early years. "Adeline, you're the best thing in this messy life." Or, "If life is a storm, you're where I'd want to be stranded." Reading them now, every word cuts a little deeper, because I can't remember the last time he looked at me with kindness, or the last time I laughed without faking it. I used to think we'd be the kind of couple who grow old together, holding hands as we told our grandkids about that flood. But somewhere along the way, Elijah must have taken a different path, one I didn't even see. Nora started talking about dance classes just a few weeks after her 5th birthday. One April afternoon, as soon as she climbed into the car after school, she lit up, chattering non-stop about her friend Emma, who was signed up for classes at Hawthorne Dance Studio, the one with the shiny wood floors, giant mirrors on the wall, and, according to Nora, real dance shoes, not the toy ones we have at home. "I want to dance too, Mommy. Teacher said if we listen and work hard, we get to perform on a real stage," she said, swaying her little shoulders to an imaginary beat, her dark brown hair flying everywhere. In the rearview mirror, her excitement lit up the car, and something in me softened. "We'll see, baby." That night, I brought it up to Elijah while we were folding laundry. He kept scrolling, barely acknowledging me, then gave a short, dismissive snort. "Dance class? You're serious?" I hesitated. "Maura really wants to, and it's not that expensive. I looked into it, it's about $70 a month." That's when he finally looked up, not to discuss it, but to scoff. "Is that so? And who's paying for this little phase? You? With your half-day paycheck?" I gripped the t-shirt in my hands tighter. "We're managing fine, Elijah. The house is paid off, the car too. I think we can budget for this." He stood up, shoved his phone in his pocket, voice suddenly cold. "If you want her to take dance, get another job. Nothing in life is free. Don't raise her to expect things she can't have." And then he walked out. I stood there, hands empty, like I had just dropped something precious I couldn't pick back up. I let the silence speak for me. But the next morning, while making Nora's bed, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under her pillow, a handwritten note. "Dear Mommy, I know dance class might be a lot of money, but I won't ask for anything else. I just want to try once. If I'm not good, you can let me stop. But if I am, will you come watch me dance? Love you the most, Nora. I read every word, my throat tightening. A purple crayon heart was scribbled in the corner. That night, after putting Nora to bed, I walked 2 miles to a small diner called Lester's Grill that had a sign in the window, now hiring evening staff. The manager, Marcia, was around 50, raspy voice but kind eyes. Got any experience? I shook my head. No, but I'm a fast learner. I really need this job. She looked me over, then nodded. Try Saturday night, starts at 5, ends at midnight. That was the only thing I knew for sure then. My daughter wanted to dance, and I was going to make it happen. From that week on, my life split clean in two. Days working at the agricultural export office. Nights tying on an apron, wiping tables, mopping floors, counting every tip, and I said nothing to Elijah. Not because I was scared, but because I knew, if I told him, he'd find a way to stop it. One night, just before 1 a.m., I came home and saw the living room lights still on. Elijah was watching TV, a case of beer beside him. He glanced at me, then smirked. Don't you wait on strangers just to buy our daughter dance shoes? I refused to give him more words. Instead, I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and let the water sting my hands until it drowned out everything else. I thought he'd see the sacrifice. But instead, I realized some people never feel grateful. They only feel threatened when you dare to do something they can't control. And nothing had prepared me for that. I started noticing strange things around midsummer. One Monday night, just after washing the dinner rush dishes at Lester's Grill and changing out of my uniform, my phone rang. It was Nora. "Where are you, baby?" I asked, surprised. Elijah usually had her in bed by then. "At Miss Lisa's house. Daddy got pizza and we're watching cartoons here tonight." I froze. "Who's Lisa?" "That blonde Miss Lisa, Mommy, the one who always takes pictures of me with a big camera. She has a tiny kitchen in her room and makes pancakes even crispier than yours." I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice light. "Sounds fun, sweetheart. Sleep well, okay? Mommy will pick you up early tomorrow." I hung up, my chest heavy. That was the first time I had ever heard the name Lisa. I initially thought she was just a coworker, maybe someone who lived nearby and occasionally helped Elijah watch Nora during my night shifts. But over time, the scattered stories from my daughter started forming a picture I could no longer ignore. Another time, while helping Nora change, I saw a brand new dress with the tags still on. The fabric wasn't anything I'd ever bought. Too pricey, too refined for a 5-year-old. I asked her, "Where did this dress come from?" She tilted her head, eyes wide with pure innocence. "Miss Lisa bought it. She said it's perfect for Emma's birthday party. Daddy said so too." I folded the dress and set it aside. It wasn't jealousy, it was the slow realization that every boundary I had tried to protect was being crossed. The next night at dinner, I tried to bring up Lisa casually while Elijah was pouring orange juice. "By the way, who's Lisa?" His eyes stayed fixed on the counter as he muttered. "A coworker, recently divorced. She does volunteer work through the company." I kept my tone even. "Oh? Nora said she's been to her house a few times." Elijah set the pitcher down and gave a dry chuckle. "Maybe once or twice I dropped her off late and Lisa invited us in." "You're overthinking again." "You're overthinking again." It landed like a slap with no sound. He always used that line whenever I felt something was off. I didn't ask more, but I didn't feel at ease. A few days later, while driving Nora home from school, she suddenly asked, "Miria, can we get ice cream?" I frowned, glancing over. "Who's Miara?" Nora beamed. "Mira. Miss Lisa calls you Mira, so I thought that was your name." I couldn't tell you how I got home. All I remember is gripping the wheel until my knuckles went white, and my heart thudding so loud it drowned out everything else. I didn't say a word the rest of the ride. Instead, I started observing in silence each new item Nora brought home, each time she casually mentioned how Miss Lisa's food tastes better than Mommy's. Each drawing of 3 people, a little girl, a man, and a blonde woman. I wasn't in them. I started feeling like I was being quietly but cruelly replaced. One evening I called earlier than usual after my shift, telling Elijah I'd pick Nora up myself. He paused for a few seconds, then said, "Maybe another time. Lisa already picked her up. They're at some art center or something." I let it go. For now. Quietly, I pulled out my phone and started searching nearby venues. I needed to know my gut wasn't playing tricks on me. That same night, after Nora had fallen asleep, I dug out the box of old birthday cards. The ones with Elijah's handwritten love notes from our early years. Suddenly, a photo slipped out. It was a picture of Elijah, Nora, and me when she was a baby. We were all smiling so brightly. I stared at it for a long time and realized, that woman in the photo, her smile no longer existed in my life. I started investigating. I needed to know how deep the betrayal ran, how much of my life had become a performance, directed by my husband with me as the last one invited to the show. It was a Wednesday. I took the morning off and went to the bank Elijah had used since before we got married. It was tucked into a quiet corner on Franklin Street. I handed the teller my ID and asked to review the transaction history of our joint account. She hesitated briefly. I smiled, steady as stone. "I'm a co-owner. I just want to see how we're actually spending our money." After a few clicks, she printed out a thick stack of papers and wrapped them in a rubber band. I sat in my car and started reading. 3 minutes later, my hands were shaking too hard to grip the steering wheel. For the past 11 months, Elijah had been making regular transfers to another account, not mine, not a shared savings account. Each transfer ranged from $400 to $650, always on the first of the month. There were smaller transactions too, coinciding with days he claimed to be on business trips. More than $8,000 total. While I was counting tips at Lester's Grill to pay for Nora's dance classes, my husband was secretly funneling money somewhere. And it clearly wasn't for the family. I photographed every page with my phone. Then, instead of going home, I drove to the tax office where I filed every year. The accountant? Martha was an Irish woman in her 60s who had handled our taxes for 3 years. I asked softly. "Has Elijah reported any assets, income, or expenses that I might not know about?" She opened the system, scrolled through, then looked at me with clear discomfort. "There's a real estate entry under Elijah's name alone, just added this year. A small condo in the Spring Ridge area, south end of town." "You've never mentioned it before." I shook my head, my whole body went cold. Back home, I waited for Elijah to leave. Then I quietly opened the wooden drawer in his home office, the one where he kept old paperwork. Under a stack of company files, I found an unsealed brown envelope. Inside was the purchase contract for the Spring Ridge condo, solely in Elijah's name. Below it was a stack of printed photos of Nora, Elijah, and Lisa. There was a photo of the three of them in a backyard, Nora sitting on Elijah's shoulders, arms raised high with joy. Another of them blowing out candles together in a modern kitchen. That wasn't mine. And then there was one that made it hard for me to breathe. Nora wore a pale lavender leotard with a little flared skirt trimmed in white lace, full ballet shoes on her feet. She had one leg lifted behind her, one arm gently arched over her head, just like she used to describe when talking about Emma. Her face was lit with a radiant smile, cheeks flushed from the movement. Behind her was Lisa, bent down, tying the laces of her shoe. In the corner of the photo was a large mirror, reflecting both of them. Not me and Nora, but Lisa and Nora. I sank to the floor, eyes stinging. I had waited for every spare dollar to put my daughter in dance class, only to realize Elijah had enrolled her already, just not with me. I forced myself to stand, carefully putting everything back in place like nothing had been touched. But in my mind, everything had collapsed. Since the day Nora was born, I believed that if I just loved her enough, worked hard enough, and stayed patient long enough, our family would hold together. But now I understand. Betrayal doesn't begin with the wrong bed. It begins with untold stories, hidden photographs, and quiet rides to dance classes where someone else is smiling in your place. I saved my energy for something smarter than a fight. What Elijah and Lisa did behind my back wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. Of time, affection, and my daughter. But instead of screaming, I quietly began reclaiming what was mine. That night I called my mother. She lived more than 300 miles away, in a small town called Maple Ridge where people still drove milk trucks in the mornings. I had never told her the full story. Until now. You don't have to say everything, she told me. But if you need to keep evidence safe, send it here, and if you ever need to leave, you always have a room here, Adeline. The tears didn't come. But my throat tightened so much, it hurt to breathe. I'm not leaving yet, but I need to be ready. I printed out copies of everything: bank statements, the deed to the Spring Ridge condo under Elijah's name, photos of Lisa with Nora, tax documents showing the secret income. I made 3 sets, one sent to my mother, one hidden in a small lockbox beneath my shoe rack, and one digitally backed up to a private email, unknown to anyone. I also opened a new bank account at a different institution, under my name only. Each week, I quietly transferred a small portion of my tips from Lester's Grill. Slowly but steadily. I named the account Freedom. Because I knew, someday soon, I would need it. A few days later, I stopped everything that no longer served me. I asked Marcia, the diner manager, to move me to weekend morning shifts so I could be home with Nora in the evenings. When she asked why, I simply said, "I'm choosing my daughter." Then I drove to Willow Dance Studio where Nora's friend Emma took classes. I spoke directly to the front desk. "I'd like to register my daughter for a beginner class. She's danced before, but this time I want it to be a completely new start." I prepaid 3 months using the tips I'd quietly saved. When Nora found out, she paused for 3 seconds, then screamed so loud I thought the windows might crack. She bounced on the bed, pounding the pillows. "I really get to dance, Mommy? For real? Not kidding?" I nodded. "For real. But this time, it's just between us. Our secret, okay?" Nora leaned in and whispered, "Then don't tell Miss Lisa, this class is just for me and Mommy." That innocent line sliced straight through me. I wrapped my arms around her, the ache still there, but something inside felt just a little lighter. That night, when Elijah got home and saw Nora hugging a brand new pair of ballet shoes, his eyebrows pulled together. "Still with the dancing? Where did you get the money?" I answered simply, "My money. From my work. I think it's worth it." He didn't say a word, just narrowed his eyes at me for a moment before turning away. But I saw it, the unease, like he realized that for the first time in years I was no longer obedient. In the weeks that followed, I spent every free evening with Nora. We practiced together, even though I looked like a stiff broom in the middle of the living room. But Nora was serious, standing tall in front of the mirror, arms folded behind her back, voice clear. "Small steps, straight back, no leaning, Mommy." I burst out laughing. She frowned. "You have to focus or you won't get any points." It was the first time in months I laughed until my stomach hurt. Not for anyone, not to pretend, just because my daughter reminded me I still had so much to live for. Slowly, Nora started calling me Mommy again. No more Mira, the name Lisa used. I never asked why. I just silently gave thanks every time she said it. I knew this wasn't the end, but at least I had begun reclaiming my place as her mother. No one else would stand in my place on Nora's stage ever again. Elijah's parents' 45th wedding anniversary took place on a Saturday afternoon in the backyard of the large house in Meadowbrook, the one I used to believe would be my second home. Elijah was the one who brought up the party, his expression calm to the point of eerie. "I think the whole family would love if you and Nora came. My parents still adore you." I looked at him, hollow. "Will Lisa be there?" He hesitated, then gave a dry chuckle. "Not sure. She's got something urgent at work, probably won't make it." I knew he was lying, but instead of calling it out, I nodded and smiled, calm, unreadable. And that night after Nora went to sleep, I laid everything out on the dining table. The documents I'd spent weeks preparing. Every sheet was a blade cutting through the image Elijah had crafted. Transfer records, hotel receipts, photos of Lisa and Nora inside the hidden condo, the property deed in his name alone. I organized it all, labeled and printed 2 sets, one for my mother-in-law, one backup. I placed them neatly in a burgundy folder. Simple, no angry letters, truth carries its own weight. That afternoon I wore the deep blue dress Elijah had given me on our second wedding anniversary. A deliberate choice. I held Nora's hand as we stepped into the lavender-filled garden, where guests raised their glasses to celebrate nearly 50 years of marriage. My mother-in-law Margaret came over to hug Nora and gently held my arm. "Thank you for coming, Adeline. Elijah said you had a shift today." I smiled, trying to keep my voice steady. "I requested the day off over a month ago. I couldn't miss something this important." Elijah stood next to his father, visibly tense. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away. I waited until everyone had settled in, glasses clinking, laughter echoing. After the appetizer, just as the mood reached its peak, I pulled the folder from my purse and handed it directly to Margaret. "Aunt Margaret, this is some information about the family. I think you should see it." She looked surprised but took it, opening the folder. The laughter around the table slowly faded as she turned each page. Her brows furrowed and her hand trembled slightly as she lifted her glasses. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice rasping. My father-in-law Richard set down his wine and took the folder. He read slowly, eyes fixed on the numbers and photos. The garden fell completely silent. Elijah shot up, his voice urgent. "You're all getting the wrong idea. This is just between me and my wife." But at that exact moment, the garden gates swung open. Lisa walked in holding a gift box with a silver ribbon. She wore a white dress, red lipstick, and an innocent expression, like a guest with no idea what storm she'd walked into. But when her eyes landed on me, she hesitated. Elijah's sister Amelia was the first to speak. "Did you know my brother still lives with his wife and daughter, Lisa?" Lisa looked around, still clutching the box. Elijah said they were just living together temporarily because of the child, that everything was already worked out, just not public yet." Amelia held up the photo I had given their mother, a picture of Elijah, Lisa, and Nora at the water park. "And this looks really worked out to me." She said nothing, and when Elijah tried to guide her away, she snapped her hand free without a word. "I think I should go." She turned and left, under the stunned gaze of everyone. Elijah looked around, stunned, his mouth closed, feet still, as if too late he realized the show was over. My father-in-law placed the folder on the table. "Is all of this true?" No one answered. Only the wind rustling through the trees, and Nora's small hand gripping mine. My mother-in-law looked at me for a long time. Then she quietly said, "Thank you for not staying silent." I rose from my seat and nodded politely. "I'll take Nora home now. Today was enough." I walked away without looking back, and for once I didn't feel the need to explain why. 2 days after the party, I filed for divorce. I brought the entire folder of evidence to the office of the lawyer who had been with me since the beginning. Kayla Duncan, a woman in her 40s with razor-sharp eyes and a voice that always softened when she saw Nora. "We'll be filing for full custody," she said, "based on infidelity, financial misconduct, and housing your child in an unreported residence." That same week, Elijah moved out. He left without a word, only a short text followed. "I'll come by for my stuff when you're not home." When I got back from my morning shift at the diner, his old pickup was gone from the driveway. The closet was empty. The office was cleared out, except for a single pen that had rolled under the desk. Only Nora didn't understand what was happening. The first night without her father, she tossed and turned until she finally fell asleep. Later that night, she suddenly sat up, clutching her blanket. "Mommy, is Daddy not coming home because he's mad at me?" I hugged her, burying my face in her soft bunny-like hair. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not your fault. Sometimes grown-ups need time apart to think more clearly." Nora nodded, but her eyes were still full of confusion. I knew I couldn't shield her from everything, but I could do one thing: stay close. I cut back most of my shifts at Lester's Grill, keeping only Saturday mornings. The rest of the week I picked up Nora early. We cooked, colored, and continued dance class. I even signed up for the parent participation option, despite how sore my body felt every time I tried to spin to the music. One time, as I bent into a shaky plie, Nora laughed so hard she hiccuped. "Mommy, your legs are saying please don't make me do this." I burst into laughter with her, and for the first time in a long while I felt light, like brushing off years of old dust from my chest. But not every moment was easy. One night, just after I tucked Nora into bed, she suddenly broke into sobs. "I miss Daddy. And Miss Lisa." She made cat-shaped pancakes. "Did I do something wrong? Is that why they don't talk to me?" I sat down and pulled her into my arms. "No one's mad at you, Nora. Grown-ups can change how they live. But the love they have for you doesn't change." She went quiet for a few seconds, then whispered, "But if Daddy loves me, why isn't he here?" I couldn't explain. So I wrapped her in silence, praying she'd grow into the answers I didn't have, without having to be hurt again. A few days later, as I was tying her ballet shoes in the studio's changing room, Nora tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "I don't need Miss Lisa to teach me ballet anymore, you're more fun." I looked up, surprised. Nora smiled softly, then said seriously, "Because when I do it wrong, you don't yell. You just laugh and try it again with me." I turned my face away, pretending to look for a hand towel, really just trying to hide the tears that had already started to fall. Fall came late that year, but I felt lighter than I had in a long time. I continued working as a sales coordinator at the agricultural company. No raise, no promotion, but I no longer worked night shifts at Lester's Grill. I came home before it got dark, cooked dinner for the two of us, listened to Nora's school stories, and kept trying to master the spin she'd been helping me with for weeks. Nora continued her classes at Willow Dance Studio. 3 times a week she was so excited she'd pack her dance gear the night before and hang her little backpack right next to the door. One day she ran up to me and said, "Teacher said I balance better now. Look, Mommy, I can do it again." I watched her twirl in the living room, toes just brushing the floor like a real little dancer. And I thought, there are things money can't buy, like a child's trust, or a hug after class, that says everything without words. One afternoon in early October, I was picking Nora up at the studio when Elijah appeared. Next to the SUV, he held out a gift and yellowed tulips, an echo of something he once knew I cared about. The kind I used to love years ago. "I wanted to talk," he said, his eyes tired. "About everything." But instead of answering, I simply said, "You're speaking to your ex-wife now, there's nothing left to negotiate." Elijah lowered his head and hesitantly held out the box. "For Nora, I miss her." I took it, left it in the car, and walked my daughter home. A few weeks later, my mother-in-law called. She said the family was trying to understand things more clearly now, that they'd had a serious conversation with Elijah. No one was defending him anymore. "You'll always be Nora's mother," she said, "and that little girl will always be part of this family." I let the silence sit for a moment. Then quietly I made space for Nora to talk with her grandparents each weekend. Some good things, I believed, were still worth keeping. During that time, my lawyer, Kayla, kept investigating Elijah's finances, and one day she called with a voice almost shaking with excitement. "Elijah's income isn't just from the main company. He's got side contracts with 3 satellite firms, none of which were declared in the divorce documents. He opened a second account under a company he created last year, E&R Consulting. He's that money for the condo. And Lisa?" Kayla replied, "Very likely, and maybe more." The discovery of hidden income changed everything. The court would now require Elijah to fully disclose his assets and recalculate the division accordingly. That week I went to the bank and opened a new account under the name Nora Rose Lancaster. I told no one, not even Elijah. Into that account I deposited all of my personal savings, along with the court-ordered child support payments Elijah had to contribute for Nora. I wrote on the folder inside the safe, "For my daughter's future, no one else touches this." That night, Nora lay curled in my arms, her eyes half closed. "Mommy." I stroked her hair. "Yes, sweetheart? If I dance on a big stage one day, will you be in the front row?" My cheek found hers as I held her close, the warmth between us saying more than words could. "Not just in the front row, I'll be holding flowers and cheering the loudest." She giggled softly. And I knew I hadn't just reclaimed my role as her mother. I had reclaimed the part of my life I thought I'd lost. Life doesn't promise fairness. but we always have the power to choose how we rise after betrayal. Adeline's story isn't just about reclaiming her daughter and the truth. It's a testament to the strength of a woman who chose to stop staying silent. Amid hurt and deception, she chose to begin again. With clarity, resolve, and unconditional love. And that's what led her out of the darkness, into a life no longer lived in shadows. What do you think of Adeline's choice? Should she forgive or keep walking her own path? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful family stories to come.